Most people think the United Kingdom is safe. Quiet streets, CCTV everywhere, police cars driving by, a country where serious danger feels like something that happened somewhere else. Somewhere far away, somewhere you don't have to worry about. That belief is wrong. There are cities in the UK where people change their routes home every day, where parents warn their kids which streets to avoid, where sirens are part of the background noise, where violence isn't shocking, it's expected. And what makes this uncomfortable is not that these places exist, it's that most people don't know they do. Because by day, these cities look normal, shops open, people go to work, buses run on time, nothing looks broken. But when the sun goes down, the rules change. Areas flip, tension rises, and people who live there know exactly when to be inside. This video is about the 10 most dangerous cities in the United Kingdom and why they became that way. Not to scare you, not to shame anyone, and not to pretend danger is everywhere, but to explain something most people never stop to ask. How does serious danger exist inside a modern, developed country like the UK? Because danger doesn't appear randomly, it builds, slowly, quietly, over years, sometimes over generations. And that's the problem at the heart of this video. The UK doesn't like talking about unsafe places. When violence happens, it's treated as isolated. An incident, a headline, a bad night. But when the same streets keep showing up again and again, something deeper is going on. Danger clusters. It sticks to certain postcodes, certain estates, certain cities. And once it sticks, it's hard to remove. The challenge is that dangerous doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Some people think it means gangs, others think it means knife crime, others think it means drugs, robberies, or violence that spills into daily life. In reality, danger is a mix of all of that, plus fear. Fear of being in the wrong place, fear of being seen as an outsider, fear of being caught in something you didn't start. And fear changes behavior. People walk faster. People avoid eye contact. People stop going out at night. People stop trusting their surroundings. That's when a city starts to feel unsafe, even if nothing happens to you personally. So the real challenge of this video is not just ranking cities. It's explaining why danger concentrates where it does, and why it hasn't gone away. Because the UK didn't become unsafe overnight. A lot of the most dangerous cities today share the same history. They were once industrial powerhouses, full of work, full of purpose, factories, docks, mines, railways, whole communities built around jobs that lasted generations. Then those jobs disappeared, not slowly, not gently, but fast. When industries collapsed, they didn't just take wages with them. They took structure, identity, routine, pride, and when nothing replaced them, gaps opened up. Those gaps didn't stay empty. Poverty moved in, drugs moved in, gangs moved in, violence followed. This is uncomfortable to say, but it's true. Danger grows where opportunity dies, and policy made it worse. Housing estates were built quickly and cheaply. Communities were concentrated instead of spread out. Services were cut, policing changed, youth centers closed, schools struggled, support systems weakened. None of this happened because people didn't care. It happened because priorities shifted. Some cities adapted, others were left behind. And when a city is left behind long enough, people stop believing help is coming. That's when rules change. Informal systems replace formal ones. Respect is enforced, not earned. Reputation becomes protection. That's when danger becomes normal. Another challenge is how we talk about crime in the UK. We love statistics, but statistics hide experience. A city can look average on paper and still feel unsafe to live in, because danger isn't evenly spread. It's local, hyperlocal. One street can feel fine, the next one feels tense. One area is calm, another is known by everyone to be avoided. People who don't live there don't see that, and outsiders often get it wrong. Some cities get labeled dangerous even when most of them aren't. Others avoid the label even when locals know the truth. Reputation lags reality, sometimes by years. That's why this list will surprise you. Some cities people assume are dangerous won't rank as high as expected. Others people never think about will sit near the top. And that's not because of headlines. It's because of patterns. Knife crime patterns, violent assault patterns, gang activity patterns, drug market patterns, and long-term deprivation patterns. But here's the most important thing. Danger in the UK is not about bad people. It's about pressure. When people feel trapped, financially, socially, geographically, tension builds. When young people see no path forward, risk feels normal. When communities feel ignored, trust breaks down. That doesn't excuse violence, but it explains why it concentrates. This video doesn't exist to scare you away from cities. Millions of people live in these places safely every day. They work, raise families, look out for each other, and try to build better lives. But pretending danger doesn't exist doesn't help anyone. Understanding it does. As we go through this list, you'll see something important. The most dangerous cities aren't dangerous everywhere. They are split. Safe zones next to unsafe ones. Normal life next to chaos. Calm streets one block away from tension. And the people who live there know exactly where those lines are. By the time we reach the top of this list, the city at number 1 won't shock you because it's violent. It will shock you because how long this has been allowed to happen. So if you're watching this thinking, that can't be true, stay with it. Because the truth about danger in the UK isn't loud. It's quiet. It's routine, and it's been building for a long time. Let's start at number 10. Before we start naming cities, we need to be clear about something. The word for dangerous can turn into clickbait fast if you don't define it properly. Because a city can feel dangerous for one person and totally normal for another. Someone who only visits the shopping district at midday might think a place is fine. Someone who lives there, takes late buses, walks home from work, or has kids going to school might tell a completely different story. So for this video, dangerous doesn't mean every street is unsafe. That's not how UK crime works. Crime is usually clustered. It sits in certain areas, around certain routes, near certain nightlife zones, or in neighborhoods dealing with long-term social pressure. Here's how we're defining dangerous in a way that's fair and fact-based. 1. Crime rate per 1,000 people. Police recorded crime. We're using crime rate per 1,000 residents as a baseline, so we're not just picking the biggest cities. The UK's official crime dashboards and police.uk comparisons use this per 1,000 residents format to help compare areas. Type of crime matters, not just volume. A place with high shoplifting is not the same as a place with high violence. In UK statistics, categories like violence and sexual offences, robbery, and possession of weapons tend to matter more when people talk about real-life danger. Police recorded crime is also the preferred source for some serious categories like homicide, robbery, and offences involving weapons. We're combining numbers with lived reality. Even when rates are high, the question is, what kind of danger is it? Is it mostly nightlife violence? Is it street robbery? Is it neighborhood-level gang conflict? Is it domestic abuse driving the numbers? Those details change how a city feels. One big warning about stats, they're not perfect. Police recorded crime depends on reporting and recording practices. If reporting goes up, recorded crime can rise even if real-life behavior doesn't change much. That's why the Office for National Statistics often talks about using police data and survey data together to get a fuller picture. Big city daytime population can distort the picture. City centers attract workers, tourists, and students. That means a city can have a higher crime rate per resident partly because the real population using the area is bigger than the resident count. Police.uk itself flags that comparisons should focus on how far above or below average an area is, not just raw rank. So when we say dangerous in this video, we mean higher crime rates, especially violence-related categories, plus the kind of day-to-day fear that changes how people live. Alright, now we start the list. City number 10, Birmingham. Birmingham makes the list at number 10 not because it's the worst in the UK, but because it's one of the clearest examples of a city that can feel completely normal until you see the numbers and the patterns. On police.uk's comparison using ONS data, Birmingham's overall recorded crime rate is listed at 118.37 crimes per 1,000 residents, year ending June 2025. Now here's what's important. Birmingham is a huge city with very different zones. There are areas that feel totally fine and areas where locals will tell you straight, don't hang around there late. This is what makes Birmingham a soft reveal entry. It isn't danger everywhere. It's danger concentrated. It's the kind of city where nightlife areas can spike violence on weekends. Certain neighborhoods see repeat problems and people's sense of safety depends heavily on time and location. And Birmingham's own comparison page shows something else that matters. It's higher than the West Midlands force average. So Birmingham is number 10 because it's a major UK city where safety changes block by block, and the data backs up that the overall pressure is above the regional norm. City number 9, Leeds. Leeds surprises people because it's often seen as a good vibes northern city, big student population, strong economy, new buildings, busy centre. But crime doesn't care about branding. On police.uk's comparison using ONS data, Leeds shows an overall recorded crime rate of 126.93 crimes per 1,000 residents for the year ending June 2025. That's not a small number, and the same police.uk page shows Leeds sitting higher than the West Yorkshire force average. Leeds earns this spot because it represents a common UK pattern: a city can be booming and still have real danger zones. When a city has a large nighttime economy, heavy foot traffic, busy transport routes, and pockets of deprivation, you often get a mix of crimes that make people feel unsafe: violence around nightlife, theft, robbery, antisocial behaviour, and repeat problem areas that locals learn to avoid. Leeds isn't a run-for-your-life city, but it's a city where the numbers and the lived experience don't match the calm image people have in their head. That's why it's number 9. City number 8. Bristol. Bristol is one of the cities people love talking about. Creative, modern, full of culture, full of energy, and that's exactly why it shocks people when it shows up on lists like this. On police.uk's comparison using ONS data, Bristol shows an overall recorded crime rate of 138.35 crimes per 1,000 residents, year ending June 2025. That's a noticeable jump from Leeds and Birmingham, and the police.uk page also shows Bristol higher than the Avon and Somerset force average. Bristol's danger profile is often linked to how city life works: busy central areas, nightlife zones, high movement of people in and out, and the kind of street-level crime that comes with crowded places. And again, this doesn't mean Bristol is unsafe everywhere. It means there's enough pressure in key areas that the overall rate rises, and residents feel it in how they plan nights out, travel routes, and where they spend time. Bristol is number 8 because it breaks expectations. People picture it as cool and relaxed. The data says it's also dealing with higher crime intensity than many assume. Up to now, the cities on this list had a familiar pattern: busy centres, nightlife, lots of movement, and crime that spikes in certain zones. From here on, the numbers jump, and the why gets harder to ignore. These next 3 aren't just dealing with isolated hotspots. They're dealing with deep pressure, long-term deprivation, addiction, repeat offending in tight areas, and a city reputation locals know is real. City number 7, Manchester. Manchester is the first city in this phase where the crime rate doesn't just feel high, it looks high in black and white. On police.uk's Compare Your Area table for the year ending June 2025, Manchester appears at 155.5 for crimes per 1,000 residents using ONS police recorded crime data in the comparison list shown. That's a big step up from the soft reveal cities. Now, Manchester is massive and split into very different worlds. There are areas that feel totally fine and areas where people naturally keep their guard up. And one big thing drives this: a city that is always on. Manchester is a magnet. Students, football, tourism, events, nights out, big transport links. And when a city has constant movement, you get constant opportunity for crime, especially theft, robbery, and violence connected to nightlife and crowded routes. But the escalation part is this: Manchester's danger is not just city centre behaviour. It's also about pockets that have carried social strain for a long time. When you hear locals talk, they don't describe Manchester as one dangerous place. They describe a map in their head: places you avoid late at night, streets where trouble repeats, areas that feel tense for no clear reason until you've lived there. That's what makes Manchester number 7. It's not just the number, it's the pattern nature of risk. The feeling that danger can be predictable, and that predictability is the scary part. Blackpool is where the list gets uncomfortable, because people don't expect a seaside town to show up here. But Blackpool's story isn't just about tourism. It's about decline, deprivation, and the kind of problems that build when a place loses stable work and gets flooded with short-term living and short-term thinking. On the police.uk comparison list shown, Blackpool appears at 158.31 crimes per 1,000 residents. And local government level reporting also highlights just how extreme the situation has been. A Lancashire profile document notes Blackpool had the highest rate of all crime per 1,000 population across the county in 2024, plus the highest rates across Lancashire for categories like robbery, vehicle crime, and violent crime. So what's going on? Blackpool has a unique mix that can push danger higher: a huge visitor economy, a heavy nighttime economy, and deep, persistent deprivation in parts of the town. It's the kind of place where the busy areas bring alcohol-fueled incidents and the struggling areas deal with something harder: addiction, antisocial behavior, and repeat offending. The scary part is how normal it can feel in the daytime. Families walking around, tourists taking photos, people buying fish and chips. But locals will tell you there's a different Blackpool after dark. and a different Blackpool away from the main tourist strip. And that's why it lands at number 6. Blackpool is a reminder that danger isn't always about size. Sometimes it's about pressure and how quickly a place can tip when too many problems stack on top of each other. Middlesbrough is where the escalation turns into something heavier, because at this level, the story isn't just crime happens. The story becomes, why does this keep happening here? On the same police.uk comparison list, Middlesbrough appears at 163.68 crimes per 1,000 residents, the highest figure shown in that table. Now here's the key: Middlesbrough's situation is often discussed in the context of wider problems in the Cleveland area, especially around serious violence and drug harm. For example, a Cleveland Police and Crime Commissioner appendix on violence and demand includes statements about very high rates of opiate crack users and notes Cleveland's violent crime rate being among the highest nationally. This matters because when addiction and deprivation concentrate, crime tends to concentrate too. Middlesbrough's history is also a big part of the story. It's a place shaped by industry, steel, heavy work, supply chains, then hit by economic shifts that didn't leave equal replacements for everyone. When jobs disappear and long-term hope drains away, you often see the same cycle. Poverty deepens, illegal markets grow, violence becomes a tool for control and reputation, and fear becomes normal for the people living closest to it. And again, just like every city on this list, Middlesbrough is not dangerous everywhere, but it's one of those places where the bad areas are intense enough that they pull the whole city's numbers and reputation upward. Middlesbrough is number 5 because it shows the hard truth of the UK's danger map. When a city carries deep economic and social damage for long enough, danger stops being random. It becomes structural. Quick pause, because if you're still here, you've probably noticed something. Up to this point, we've been using overall crime rate per 1,000 residents as the main lens. That's why places like Middlesbrough, Blackpool, and Manchester climbed so high. The total pressure across the year is huge, and it shows up in the numbers. But here's the thing nobody tells you when they throw around a dangerous city lists online: total crime doesn't always match the fear people feel. A city can have loads of volume crime, theft, shoplifting, criminal damage, and still feel okay in many areas. Then another city might have a lower overall rate, but a bigger share of serious violence, weapons, and knife-enabled crime, which makes it feel worse on the street. So from here on, the list tightens around something more specific. Where does serious danger show up most often, and why? Because when people say, "I don't feel safe," they usually don't mean, "I might get my bike stolen." They mean, "I don't want to walk home at night. I don't want my kid hanging around the wrong crowd. I don't want to be near a fight, a robbery, or a knife." And the uncomfortable truth is, in the UK, a lot of knife-enabled and serious violent crime is concentrated in a few big urban areas. The Office for National Statistics explains that most knife-enabled crime happens in metropolitan areas and that the Metropolitan Police, London, recorded 30% of all knife-enabled offences, with the West Midlands recording 8% and Greater Manchester 6%. That's why the next 3 cities are pre-climax. Because these are places where danger isn't just a number, it's a feeling locals recognise, and it's linked to serious crime patterns. City number 4, Liverpool. Liverpool is a city people love, and for good reason: music, culture, pride, and strong neighbourhood identity. But it also shows up consistently in crime comparisons inside its own force area. On police.uk's Compare Your Area breakdown, Liverpool is listed at 124.02 crimes per 1,000 residents, year ending June 2025, higher than the Merseyside force average shown on the same page. Now, Liverpool at number 4 isn't about saying the whole city is dangerous. It's about the pattern locals talk about: sharp differences between areas, and a nighttime economy that can flip the mood quickly. In cities like Liverpool, danger often lives in 2 places: busy centres, where crowds plus alcohol plus late transport routes can lead to violence, robbery, and opportunistic crime; stressed pockets, where deprivation and limited opportunity make organised crime and drug markets harder to shift. And Liverpool has another factor that matters for feel: heavy movement. A city with big foot traffic creates more opportunities for theft and street crime. That doesn't mean residents are doomed. It means you have to be alert in the way you don't in quieter places. Liverpool is number 4 because it's a city where crime intensity is high enough to show clearly in official comparisons, and where serious incidents shape how people talk about safety, especially at night. City number 3, Birmingham. Birmingham is the point where the list stops surprising people and starts confirming what many locals already feel: this is a huge city with huge pressure, and that pressure spills into violence in certain areas. In Police.UK's Similar Areas Comparison List, ONS source, Birmingham appears with an overall crime rate of 118.37 crimes per 1,000 residents, year ending June 2025. Now, again, Birmingham isn't one mood. It's a patchwork. There are safe areas and tense areas. But here's why Birmingham climbs higher in a danger conversation. It sits inside the West Midlands, and the ONS notes the West Midlands Police recorded 8% of all knife-enabled offences in England and Wales, second only to London's Met in share. That's a big deal, because knife crime isn't evenly spread. It concentrates where youth violence is entrenched, drug markets are active, and people carry weapons for fear, reputation, or protection. Birmingham's challenge is the same one many big UK cities face. Some neighbourhoods have been under pressure for years. Unemployment, reduced youth services, housing stress, and policing alone cannot solve it. So Birmingham is number 3 not because it's unsafe everywhere, but because the serious risk profile is strong enough that it shows up both in overall comparisons and in wider patterns of knife-enabled crime concentration across England and Wales. City number 2, London. London at number 2 is tricky because it proves a point people argue about all the time. London can be safe. Many Londoners live normal lives and never experience violence directly. But London also has the scale, the crowd density, and the crime concentration to make it one of the most intense places in the country for serious offences. The ONS is blunt about where knife-enabled crime is concentrated. The Metropolitan Police Service recorded 30% of all knife-enabled offences across England and Wales. That's not a bit higher. That's a massive share. And the Met's own knife-enabled crime bulletin shows long-term trends and acknowledges decreases since mid-2024. But the point remains, the volume is still large enough to require ongoing reporting and tracking. Why does London feel dangerous to some people even when they've never been attacked? Because the risk is local but the scale is huge. One borough can feel calm, another can feel tense. One street is full of families. 2 streets away, it's phone theft and robbery hotspots. You can go from safe to unsafe faster than you can in most UK cities. Also, London has a unique outsider effect. A lot of victims are visitors, commuters, tourists, people who don't know the unwritten rules of the area. That means danger can feel random if you don't have local knowledge. London is number 2 because the serious crime concentration, especially knife-enabled offences, is the largest in the country by share, and that shapes how the city is experienced, even when most people are just living normal lives. We're almost at the end now, and the final city isn't number 1 because it's the biggest, or because it makes the loudest headlines. It's number 1 because the danger pattern is stubborn, and the reasons behind it are deeper than one bad year. Bradford sits at number 1 on this list not because it has the biggest population, or the loudest headlines, or the most famous reputation. It sits here because the patterns don't go away. Year after year, Bradford appears near the top of UK crime rate rankings when measured per 1,000 residents. It often records one of the highest overall crime rates in England, and crucially, that isn't driven by just one type of offence. Violence, robbery, weapons offences, drug crime, and antisocial behaviour all contribute. That mix is what makes Bradford different. In many cities, crime spikes come from nightlife zones or temporary surges. In Bradford, the pressure feels built into daily life in certain areas. Locals don't talk about bad weekends. They talk about bad neighbourhoods, bad routes, and long-standing problems that everyone knows about. And that's the key reason Bradford is the climax of this video. The danger here doesn't feel accidental. Bradford's story is deeply tied to history. Once a major centre of textile manufacturing, the city was shaped by industry that employed huge numbers of people for generations. When those industries collapsed in the late 20th century, the impact was brutal and uneven. Jobs disappeared fast. Skills lost value overnight. Whole communities were left without a clear path forward. Nothing replaced that work at the same scale. What followed was long-term deprivation concentrated into specific districts. High unemployment, overcrowded housing, limited opportunities for young people. And when opportunity dries up, informal economies fill the gap. That's where organised crime, drug markets, and violence take root. Bradford has also faced deep social fragmentation. Communities often live alongside each other rather than together. That separation can reduce trust, weaken informal social control, and make it harder to break cycles of offending. When people don't feel connected to the wider city, the city stops feeling like it belongs to them. And danger grows fastest where belonging is weakest. Statistically, Bradford regularly shows crime rates far above the national average, particularly for violence and sexual offences, robbery, and drug-related crime. But the numbers only tell half the story. The other half is how people behave. Parents warn kids early. People avoid certain areas completely. Taxi drivers know which streets not to stop on. Residents plan their lives around risk. That's when danger becomes normalized. Another reason Bradford tops this list is how persistent the problem is. Crime isn't spiking because of one event or short-term pressure. It's been high for years. Policing efforts come and go. Regeneration plans are announced. Funding is promised. Some progress happens, but it's slow, uneven, and often drowned out by the scale of the challenge. And that creates fatigue. When people stop believing things will change, behavior shifts. Reporting drops. Trust drops. Informal rules replace formal ones. Reputation becomes currency. Violence becomes a tool, not a shock. Bradford isn't dangerous everywhere. That's important to say. Many people live normal, peaceful lives there, but the density of high-risk areas, combined with long-standing deprivation, means danger is never far away. You can cross from a quiet street into a tense one in minutes. That proximity matters. It's also why Bradford feels different from cities like London or Manchester. In those places, danger often feels tied to scale. In Bradford, it feels tied to entrenchment. Problems are older, deeper, harder to shift. This isn't about blaming residents. It's about recognizing what happens when economic collapse, social division, and underinvestment overlap for decades. Bradford is number one because it shows what danger looks like when it becomes structural. Not dramatic, not sudden, just constant. And that's the hardest kind of danger to fix because people learn to live with it. That's why Bradford sits at the top of this list. Not because it's the worst place in the UK, but because it shows, more clearly than anywhere else, how long-term neglect can turn risk into routine, and how difficult it is to reverse once that line is crossed. When you zoom out from this list and stop thinking about individual cities, a much bigger picture comes into focus. What we've been looking at isn't just crime. It's history playing out in real time. Danger in the UK is not random. It didn't appear overnight. And it didn't spread evenly. Most of the cities that ranked highest share the same background. They were built around heavy industry, manufacturing, docks, or large-scale labor. For decades, those jobs gave people structure, income, pride, and routine. Communities grew around work. Identity grew around purpose. Then that foundation collapsed. From the 1970s onward, deindustrialization hit parts of the UK hard and fast. Factories closed, mills shut down, ports declined, jobs vanished quicker than new ones appeared. Some cities adapted, others were left behind. What followed wasn't just unemployment, it was a long chain reaction. Families lost stability, young people lost clear paths forward, public services stretched thinner, housing deteriorated, hope drained slowly. Politics matters here. Decisions about investment, housing, education, and policing shaped which cities recovered and which ones struggled. Regeneration funding often arrived late, short-term, or unevenly. Promises were made. Some were kept, many weren't. And when communities feel ignored for long enough, trust breaks down. That's where danger takes root. Crime grows fastest where opportunity shrinks. Violence grows where people feel trapped. Gangs grow where informal power replaces formal support. And once those patterns settle in, they're hard to undo. Another uncomfortable truth is that the UK's approach to crime often focuses on reaction instead of prevention. Policing responds to incidents. Courts process cases. Prisons fill up, but the deeper causes, poverty, overcrowding, school exclusion, lack of youth services, untreated addiction, move slower and cost more to fix. So the cycle continues. This doesn't mean these cities are lost. Far from it. Every place on this list is full of people who care deeply about where they live. People raising families, running businesses, looking out for neighbors, trying to make things better. But it does mean danger can't be understood without context. A city isn't dangerous because of the people who live there. It's dangerous because of the conditions they've been forced to live under for too long. Another thing this list exposes is how uneven safety feels across the UK. Two streets apart can feel like different worlds. One area calm, another tense. That unevenness creates fear because people never quite know where the line is. And fear changes behavior. People stop going out. People stop trusting strangers. People stop believing things will improve. That's the real damage danger does. Not just the crime itself, but the way it reshapes everyday life. So what's the takeaway from all of this? First, dangerous city is not a permanent label. It's a snapshot of pressure. Cities rise and fall over time. History shows that places can change when investment, opportunity, and trust return together. Second, safety isn't just about police numbers. It's about long-term choices. Education, housing, jobs, community spaces, support before crisis, and finally, pretending danger doesn't exist helps no one. Talking about it honestly, without blame or exaggeration, is the first step toward change. This list isn't about fear. It's about understanding. Understanding how a country as developed as the UK can still have places where danger feels normal. Understanding how history, politics, and policy shape daily life. And understanding that safety is not evenly shared, but it could be. If this video made you think differently about cities you thought you knew, watch the next one.